want to own a Tokay Gecko. First off, congratulations on making the right decision on your gecko purchasing needs. However, before you get to own one of these amazing animals, there are some things you need to know on how to care for them in order to keep them in happy and healthy conditions. So it's a good thing you clicked on this video, because that's exactly what we're going to be going over today, the top 5 basic necessities you need to know in order to care for a Tokay Gecko. Care topics are going to include number 1, the enclosure size, number 2, heating and lighting, number 3, the humidity, 4, the diet, and then lastly, what to fill the enclosure with to make sure that your animal's happy in its new home. So with that outro out of the way, let's get started with number 1, the enclosure size you need for a Tokay Gecko. Enclosure size for a Tokay Gecko is going to be determined by what size the animal is. If you're getting somewhere around a baby, oh my god. Hang on son, we've got work to do, we've got a video to make. The size you're going to be wanting for a Tokay Gecko is going to be determined by the size of the animal. If you are getting a CBB baby, like one from me, you guys will want to be putting it in a little bit of a smaller enclosure until it grows up to be an adult size, like our friend Bert here. The size is going to be somewhere around a 10-gallon enclosure, or the equivalent being a 12 by 12 by 18 from Zoomet or Exoterra. There are always PVC alternatives as well, but that is around the size you're going to want for a baby to be happy and secure as it grows up. Of course, as with anything in life, it gets bigger as it gets old. Oh my god! As it gets old, oh my god. With anything in life, as it gets older, it gets bigger, and with that being said, you're going to need a larger enclosure once it becomes that adult size. Personally, for me, I keep my Tokay Geckos in anywhere from a 20-gallon to 29-gallon, or the equivalent being an 18 by 18 by 24. So some great alternatives. You're not looking for the standard glass type aquarium, which leads us to today's sponsor, Zen Habitats. Zen Habitats is an enclosure maker like the ones right beside me and the one right behind me. They make absolutely beautiful enclosures, including a 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot option, which would be absolutely perfect for a Tokay Gecko like Bert right here. So looking for an absolute mansion of enclosure for your lovely new Tokay Gecko, I highly recommend Zen Habitats. You guys can check out some more information about them using the link right down there below in the description. Now we have the enclosure size figured out for Tokay Geckos, we can move on to the next topic at hand, which is going to be number 2, the heating and lighting requirements you need for a Tokay. Unlike crested geckos, Tokay Geckos actually like it pretty warm. You're going... Out of you, young man. Showtime's over. We talk about temperatures you're going to need in the enclosure. There are 2 different ones that you need to consider. Number 1, ambient, and number 2, the basking temperature. Ambient's going to be the air temperature, the temperature that's actually inside of the enclosure, where basking temperatures are going to be one where a basking source is being utilized, whether that be some sort of heat mat, heat bulb, anything like that, where that one designated area is getting a certain degree, whereas an ambient is the all-around temperature of the enclosure. Mentioned a few seconds ago, Tokay Geckos like it warm. It's with that being said, you are going to want your ambient temperatures to be in the high 70s. We're at the top of the enclosure where that basking area is going to be, somewhere around the 78 to 80 degrees, whereas it goes lower, it's going to be a little bit lower in that temp, somewhere around the 77 to 75 degrees. That way the animal is able to tell when it wants to be. If it wants to be a little bit warmer, it will go higher up to where that basking spot and the air temperatures are a little higher, or it will go lower in the enclosure if it wants to cool down a little bit. Basking temps go, you're going to want to hit somewhere around the 85 degree area. There are a lot of ways to do that. The standard way is just getting a recommended basking bulb with the proper wattage. It's really difficult to tell you exactly what wattage you need. There's a lot of variables, so a little trial and error right there for the basking bulb. Personally over here, as you can see by the sweat on my forehead, this building runs hot. So we actually utilize both UVB and as a UVB source, but also as a basking source as well. With the temperature where they can bask on that UVB does also get around somewhere around the 80 to 85 degree area. Speaking of UVB, that is going to bring us to the second form of this topic, and that is going to be the lighting section. So the lighting section of the Tokay Geckos, it's really dependent on what kind of enclosure you want. If you guys are looking for a fully bioactive planted vivarium for your animal, then you will need to supplement some sort of lighting. Plant lights are the best source to get. There are a lot of cheap ones over on Amazon you can get, but of course everyone wants to know, do you actually need UVB for your Tokay Gecko? Make a long answer short, the answer to that question is going to be no, not really. Personally for me, I utilize UVB, as I mentioned earlier, as a basking source and UVB source. Over here at DBCB Exotics, we have a pretty large Tokay breeding project going on, and UVB is always an added benefit for those animals. However, I find it not to be too much of a necessity. It's not going to be something like a bearded dragon where if they don't have it, they're going to immediately succumb to MVD and all of that stuff. So while yes, it is a great added benefit, it definitely isn't a necessity where you absolutely have to have it. For with that being said, if you are not providing UVB for your animal, make sure you are supplementing with calcium with D3 once a week to make sure that it's getting the minerals that it needs in order to not get that scary stuff like MBD. Moving on, we still got plenty of topics to talk about, and that is going to bring us to number 3, the humidity requirements you need to hit for your Tokay gecko. This gecko comes from 2 different places, Indonesia and newly found Florida as an invasive population, unfortunately. What do those 2 things have in common? It's hot and it's humid. It's with that being said that Tokay geckos do like it more on the humid side. The parameters you are going to want to hit to make your Tokay gecko a happy and healthy gecko is going to be somewhere around the 60 to 80% area. Of course, you're always going to want a humidity dip going throughout the day. You don't want it to stand at that 80 to 60% area like this. You want it to go more around like this. Little roller coaster. Now, roller coaster's not fun if it goes like this. A roller coaster's fun if it goes like this, if you guys know what I'm saying. Easy ways to make sure that your Tokay gecko has enough humidity is, of course, going to be missing the enclosure, adding enough substrate to make sure that it stays moist more of the time. There's a couple of different things. I actually went into a video around right here that goes a lot more in depth on the humidity care and how to obtain that right humidity. But pretty much the gist is you missed it, you let it dip for a little bit, goes to that 80 to 60%, you missed again, it goes up, and then it goes down, and then up and down, and then you die. And that's how you take care of it. Alright, we're getting there. We know the enclosure size now. We got the proper tank set up. We got the proper lights to get on in there for that gecko, and we know that we need to mist the cage and not keep it dry as a rock for the animal. We're doing pretty good right now, but I guess the next topic or the next question people are gonna have is, well, what do I feed this thing? I mean, do I just give it some liver and a cow's foot and call it a day? Well, no, that would be silly if you did that, but it's a good thing it brings us to our next topic, which is going to be number 4, the diet of the Tokay gecko. When it comes to the diet of the Tokay gecko, it is pretty standard from all of your other lizards out there. It's not going to be like the crested geckos where you get the little pre-made food and you're good to go. Unfortunately, it is not that easy. However, it's pretty easy to obtain these guys. Now, Tokay geckos are going to be insectivores. What does that mean? It means bugs. They eat a variety of different types of bugs, going from crickets, superworms, mealworms, black soldier fly larvae, the bunch of different roaches, dubia, lobster, red runners, on and so forth. Pretty much, if it's a bug, a Tokay gecko will eat it. However, just like with anything else, feeding too much of one source is not going to be good for the animal, as it is not good for ourselves. Can't feed yourself off of McChickens from McDonald's every single day, or it's just not good. Unfortunately. God damn, them chickens are good though. Being said, the most important part of the Tokay gecko's diet is going to be the variety, offering multiple food sources, figuring out what it likes, what it doesn't like. Personally for me, we feed a bulk of crickets over here just because Tokay geckos really do love that movement and excitement going on. They will also feed off of lobster roaches, dubia roaches. Some will feed off of my superworms as a treat, but it really depends. It's really hard to get them to dish feed. I find the more active feeders are the better sources to go to because they really like that interactive and mental enrichment of hunting their food, whether it just being put in a bowl for them. They just don't seem to dig it that much, unfortunately. Look at us over here, almost certified Tokay experts. We've got the enclosure size down, the heating down, the lighting, the humidity, and now we know what to feed them. However, we're one step too close, or not close enough, to knowing exactly how to care for our Tokay gecko. And that's, of course, going to be what do you fill the enclosure with? What kind of things do you need to make sure that a Tokay gecko what kind of stuff do you need to make sure your Tokay gecko is mentally enriched inside its own enclosure? Well, it's a good thing that brings us to our last and final topic, number 5, what to fill the enclosure with. Now, just like most gecko species, Tokay geckos are arboreal. With that being said, you need to put stuff where they can climb around and hide around in tall places instead of low places. For me, my 2 favorite things are going to be branches and cork bark, either cork bark or cork tubes. When it comes to branches, there are a couple sources you can go to. The best source I always find is my woods, just out there in Mother Nature. It's free branches as long as you don't get caught taking them in your local conservation area. Pretty much the basic setup that you need for a Tokay gecko. Of course, you can always add live plants, make it a little bit cooler, a little bit more just special, but personally, for the most part, man, I got 20 cages of Tokay geckos. I can't put live plants in every single one of them. Well, boys and girls, there you have it. You are now certified Tokay gecko keeping expert. Congratulations, you will receive your badge on the Facebook page where you can now tell other people how to care for their Tokay geckos and that they're doing it wrong. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for taking the time of your day to follow us over here at DBCB Exotics. Don't forget to check out the cool stuff we have in the description down below. I will see you guys next time, but until then, goodbye.